All right, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we're going to talk about Errol Spence Jr. saying that he believes it's his time against Manny Pacquiao, and also the meaning of the leaked sparring tapes that came out for Errol Spence Jr. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So we are in waiting mode for one of the biggest fights in boxing that's going to take place, I believe, August 21st. And that is going to be Errol Spence Jr. versus Manny Pacquiao. There's a lot of stuff being said on the Manny Pacquiao side about Errol Spence Jr. And I honestly, man, I think that it is all fun and good, but it's all nonsense at the same time. And also I want to talk about Errol Spence Jr. and what Errol Spence Jr. actually said about his approach for the fight. So first of all, Errol Spence Jr. had a sparring tape that was leaked by, I don't know, because I'm telling you, I don't know who would be that close to get that sparring tape and then go ahead and it's hard to get in that gym to begin with. I've actually been in Errol Spence Jr.'s gym and witnessed him sparring before, and I don't know who would have been able to actually get that footage. I also don't know when that footage was, but the footage appears to show Errol Spence Jr. Getting touched up in sparring. But here's the thing with that, man. I sit there and I look at the guy first, and they called him Little Pacquiao, I think is what they said. The rumor that the guy's name was Little Pacquiao. If that's Little Pacquiao, what is Manny Pacquiao? Because the guy that Errol Spence Jr. was sparring was bigger than Errol Spence Jr. Looked like he was a bigger, more solid fighter than Errol Spence Jr. is. And actually, I've seen that guy. He's a right-hander. He's not a southpaw. You can tell in the tape he's an orthodox fighter, not a southpaw. And when I was in the gym and I watched sparring, I think that I remember that particular guy. And Errol Spence Jr. did get good work with him. But here's the thing. You don't know what stage of camp that was. At number one, you don't know what stage of camp that was. You don't know if Errol Spence Jr. was working on something specifically when he was sparring him. And most importantly, you don't know how that sparring session went because you only see bits and pieces. It's not like somebody showed a tape of an entire sparring session. For all we know, Errol Spence Jr. was might have been handling the guy for large amounts of the sparring session, but didn't, but then the tapes are specifically edited to show the part where he's getting hit. So, and also I know that Errol Spence Jr. also spars people back to back. So he'll have a big cruiser. Like when I was there, and I'm not going to say the name of the guy, but there was a big guy he sparred with who was a cruiserweight. They might have done 12 rounds, and then after that guy was done, he left, and then somebody else came in, and then he had a fresh person come in, and that person was sparring Errol Spence Jr. while Errol Spence Jr. had not, I don't think it was 12 rounds, but say it was like 6 rounds, because Errol Spence might have sparred, 12 rounds total, but 6 was with one big guy, and then he brings in a fresh sparring partner after Errol Spence Jr. has already been in there for 6 rounds, and then they go another 6 rounds. So you don't know what stage of fatigue Errol was with. You just absolutely don't know what was going on in that particular scenario. So for me, it doesn't give me any visibility into what the state of Errol Spence Jr. is in. But however, Errol Spence Jr., when he gave a recent interview, gave me a lot more insight into where his mind was and what his mind was as far as his approach for the fight. And that was that he's going to be Errol Spence Jr. And he feels like that it's his time, that he doesn't really need a plan B for Manny Pacquiao, because his plan is going to be to keep pressure on Manny Pacquiao, to cut off the ring, get Manny Pacquiao out, at a range where Errol Spence can control the action, right? But if he slips in, he's going to be able to get in his body shots, do his work, and that's going to be his That's going to be his plan for Manny Pacquiao. And the interesting thing about the fight is that Manny Pacquiao is a pressure fighter. Errol Spence Jr. is a pressure fighter, but Manny Pacquiao is somebody that really pressures you with his feints, pressures you with the kind of strange angles that he's going to take, and then he kind of jumps in with a flurry of punches, and then he tries to get out. Now, Freddie Roach said that that's going to be the approach that Manny Pacquiao is going to take. Is going to be the one similar to what he did with Antonio Margarito. Now, I couldn't tell where he did anything different, really significantly different with Antonio Margarito, but I think what they're saying is that they're going to take the same approach and prepare for him as if he was Antonio Margarito, because they're both taller welterweights, and Antonio Margarito might actually be taller than Errol Spence Jr. And they're both they're both pressure fighters, people that like to keep the pressure. However, I think that is an error, because Antonio Margarito has one direction, and that's forward. And if Antonio Margarito can't outpunch you, can't do that, Antonio Margarito is going to lose. And also, Antonio Margarito is somebody that is used to taking one. He'll take two to give one. And Errol Spence Jr. is really not taking any punches. You're going to have very, very good punch placement for Manny Pacquiao to really effectively sustain an attack on Errol Spence Jr. And I think that is one of the most underrated aspects of Errol Spence Jr.'s game, is his defense, which is something that Antonio Margarito lacks. Antonio Margarito carries his hands low. Like I said, he's willing to walk through fire in order to get tight on you and then try to land big shots, where Errol Spence Jr. is not taking shots. And matter of fact, if you look at how he fought Mikey Garcia, Errol Spence Jr. was fighting Mikey Garcia from the outside, but at the same time was applying a tremendous amount of pressure to him. And that's how I think the fight's going to go. Now, I do want to say, though, that again, and I've said this on other videos that I've made about this subject, that there's two mistakes that can be made on both sides. Because number one, I think that this is a closer fight than either side of the camps think it is. Like, Manny Pacquiao's people, for some reason, think, or at least the people that are the fans of Manny Pacquiao, have this idea in their mind that Errol Spence Jr. is some slow, flat-footed fighter. And I don't think that is true at all. Errol Spence Jr. can definitely get on his toes and definitely has the ability to box on the outside when he chooses to do so, like when he did with Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia, he fought a large amount of that on the outside, just boxing and scoring points. Now, the reason for that was, I believe, that his conditioning wasn't all the way there, because he wasn't necessarily living the fighter's lifestyle, but still it shows that he has the ability to fight on the outside. Likewise with Manny Pacquiao, I don't think that it is smart for people to say, Manny Pacquiao's 42 years old, that means he's not going to bring anything to the table. Well, there's been a lot of rumors around Manny Pacquiao and his conditioning for a while, and I don't expect it to be anything different here. He's going to come in full go. And I do believe that he is definitely a very, very wily and smart boxer who could definitely get some rounds off of Errol Spence Jr. But it's going to be important for Errol Spence Jr. to dominate the fight. Otherwise, Manny Pacquiao may get the decision. I don't think he has to knock Manny Pacquiao out to get the decision, but I think that he's got to win large stretches of the fight at a time. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.